I'm trying to remember. There's been lots of stuff, but
Yeah.
also not that much stuff at the
Oh, we
same
can talk
time.
about those pictures that, so people put context behind the pictures that have been coming out from behind the scenes of or like official pictures from Sea of Monsters, and it's giving more context. Specifically, one thing that we know already is that they changed the scene with the Lystrogonians, and it's been changed so that it takes place at camp. It's more diversion at camp than it is what happens when Annabeth picks up Percy at school. So I'm kind of curious at what's going to happen when she picks him up at school, because I mean, there has to be a reason he has to like duck out of orientation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Basically, the pictures from that were from. There's a book that's a Sea of Monsters like version, I think, of Sea of Monsters that is coming out in like a month, and they did the same thing with the Lightning Thief, and they put in like pictures from the show to like promote it. And I remember buying other books like that when I was a teenager of other book series that did that kind of thing. And so they have little descriptions underneath each picture. um Becky said to somebody, I don't remember who anymore, on somebody on Threads, like a podcast person who
I think it
is,
was that damn meme page.
yeah, that makes sense. That there would still be something happening at the school, but it would not be as long. I'm guessing that it won't be as long as like a whole thing at the school and then them leaving. Instead, it will be they start attacking them at the school and then they run out, and then Tyson picks him up and takes him outside, and they leave that way, but they're still like being chased when they get to camp. Because the main thing from those pictures that it's pretty much like everyone's like, oh, so many things are happening. I'm like, this is probably the first, I don't know, 10-15 minutes of the first episode. It seems like a lot because we don't know anything, but it probably won't take that long for them to even like get through that those pictures that they put out. It's still fun to see, of course. But the thing I liked about it is that it shows that picture of Luke from Entertainment Weekly, where he's wearing his white jumpsuit and he's on like probably blackjack. What will eventually become named Blackjack because it's a black horse. And it's that one shot of him looking back, and so I'm guessing that they get attacked by the Lastrogonians, which we know, which is that the end of the trailer that they put out in July, where we see where Tyson's reveal happens, and Percy really sees like who Tyson really is and stuff to protect him when they're getting attacked by those things. But that Percy sees Luke, and that is also the scene when he's wearing his super fancy jumpsuit where he stabs Thalia's tree like really aggressively and it starts bleeding. And so that's probably what he's doing is I think they're doing it in a more fun way of having the giants attack, literally showing us that Luke sent those giants to camp to distract everybody so he could show up and stab her tree and leave without anybody noticing that he was there, basically. But it seems like Percy like catches him doing it. Of course, it being Percy that catches him doing it, somebody who already doesn't like him sees him doing that, and then they leave. But I like the pictures because it shows in a very like clear way how different camp is, where they show up and that happens. Clarice is having to protect the camp, which we already know from the books, but still. She shows up and has to protect them. They get attacked. Luke stabs Thalia basically and leaves. And then right after that is when like Tantalus shows up and Percy has to be like escorted to his cabin, and he looks very displeased about this in like the pictures of it. And I'm like, well, yeah, I would be really weirded out by this too, but it's just right away they are going to set everything up on how different camp is, which is the main thing, of course, of that book. And I like that they're making it very clear. I was kind of hoping that they would do that with Luke, that they would have Luke and Chris Rodriguez and stuff like literally show up, and anyone else at camp, to instead of it just being like a known thing, it much more drives the point home when they literally like see them like scampering off into the distance while they're doing like their dastardly plans. So it seems like that's what they're doing, and that seems fun. I legitimately don't want to know, like, hardly anything.
Mhm.
Um, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. That's why I think it's funny that, like, Becky thought that I was asking her things about I don't ask things about the TV show. I can be patient with the TV show.
Mhm.
I like thinking about it when we get new things, of course, but I don't want to ask her things about the show or in general. Like, I only want to know certain, like, enough to be excited. I don't actually want to know most things the way that other people seem to want to know everything.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I don't need to know everything ahead of time. I'm okay with a lot of the changes that have been made because, I mean, we keep saying this. We're okay with it because Rick's an executive producer and
mhm,
he's also partially in on these decisions. Him and Becky are both executive producers making these decisions. And so a lot of times the changes to us don't feel like they're breaking the spirit of the work.
mhm,
And that's really what's important in especially a show like this is more the spirit of the message that it's bringing about and not necessarily that it needs to be a one for one, which I don't know why people still want one for ones. Like some one for ones would be terrible. We're always going to defend this show because it's made by people who love the story. Like
mhm.
that's really all that matters. But yeah, so people have been like the Aphrodite freak out happened. Luckily, people seem to be pretty chill about this like Lystragonian reveal that it
Mhm.
is changed. And especially like I feel like it does make sense pacing wise. Like they need to get to camp pretty quick. Like they should get to camp within the first episode when you really think about how a show should flow.
Mhm.
And like that should be the formula is first episode is however they end up at camp and then last episode is them leaving somehow, you know?
Yeah, and it's also a thing of they don't really need to. I, I'm like sitting here like, do they really need to like make another monster thing they need to fight at camp when they can just use the same one again? And then they don't have to take all that time away and they can use that somewhere else later during the season. That would probably surprise us because they can do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or they can
I mean,
just not do it.
the school is not important other than like it's how we're introduced to Tyson. Um
Mhm.
like Meriwether Pet Prep is like one chapter, you know? Every
Mhm.
single high school except for or every single middle school and high school except for good high school he only goes to for 1 year, and so even for Percy they're somewhat insignificant.
I saw so many people posting that pictures because they were happy to see Sally because
Yeah,
everyone loves Sally.
I mean, it makes so much more sense for her character that she was doing more about Tyson. Like, okay,
Mhm.
screw it. If nobody's going to take care of this kid, I am. Because, like, that's just, it's more who she is. And I feel like maybe it didn't happen that way in the second book because Rick didn't fully flesh out who she was yet. Other
Well,
than, like, this is Percy's mom. He really loves her. She's great to him.
and I think it's also a thing of in a book, you just don't have. It's easier to like not focus on those little details
Hmm.
because Percy just like his narration just continues on.
Hmm.
But like in a TV show, it would be harder to justify because you would literally like see Percy checking on a child that is like homeless and hungry and thinking like why would his mom let this child just like be out on the streets like this going hungry when he
Yep.
doesn't have any food. It's harder to think about. It's just a different way to think about it. When you're in a book, it's easier to not think about that stuff because you're not actually watching it happen like you would be in a TV show. No one wants to watch a scene of Percy going to check on Tyson when his mom is knows about it but isn't doing something to help when she normally would be.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
especially
we
now
don't
that she
need
has
Tyson in the box.
yeah, and especially now that she has dead Gabe money. They have actual money now in this starting this season to do that sort of thing where they can have Tyson staying with them
Hmm.
and take care of him when that they could never do that before they sold Gabe's statue, which I hope is on the show too, just because it's
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, speaking of which, speaking of Gabe stuff, I wanted to bring up some stuff from my my Lightning Thief reread. with William. One of which, so Shannon made a post about this because I was just super curious. The way it's presented what happened with Gabe. Shoot, I don't have the page open right away, but essentially what Grover ends up talking to Percy about, because Grover's the one who tells Percy, like, your mom definitely married that guy to throw monsters off of your scent. And it's while they're waiting at the bus station after Argus drops them off from camp, and like Grover can just sense that he's thinking about his mom and that he's thinking about Gabe too, because they're a few blocks away from where their apartment is. And he he's like, you're wondering why your mom ever even married that guy, aren't you? And he describes it as, he smells so incredibly human. There's no way that monsters could smell like you under his scent. I can even smell Gabe on you, and it's been a week since you've seen him. So he's like, your mom was really smart to have protected you that way. And so my brain immediately was like, okay, but how did she know the scent thing? Like, how did she think to cover his scent? And I don't know, maybe it was experience with monsters. Maybe she just happened to notice, like, wow, when we're in this area with these type of people, the monsters don't seem to come. I don't know.
Yeah, and then like Gina and I took that and ran with it because that's something that I've never thought. I haven't spent that much time thinking about that before. I know that people have brought it up, and I don't know. That's one of those things. Like, I just accepted that world building when I read the first book, and I just didn't really, even watching the show, I just didn't really think about it very much of like, how did she figure that out? But then when you were asking me about it, I was like, yeah, how did she figure that out? Like, did she have, and I posted something like, did she have like an abusive partner where she figured that out? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure this partner would be Poseidon, but I wasn't sure because I was like trying to figure out in my mind if Poseidon would have been around enough to where she could have even figured something like that out, that when Percy was around, like, quote unquote bad people or whatever, that people would leave her alone. And then our friend Jean started talking about it with us too, where she pointed out the thing that's just one of those things, like, you just don't think about it until you really sit there and think logically, that that when Sally got pregnant with Percy, Zeus definitely would have tried to kill her. And she would have had to deal with all of that the whole time she was pregnant, figuring out a way to get away from him. Because if Zeus took out Maria, like Nico and Bianca's mom, after he found out about them, he, for whatever reason, he knew about Percy. He somehow found out about Percy existing. We know that. And like, the thing that Jean brought up was the scene that they put in the TV show where Poseidon shows up when she's just doesn't know what to do when Percy thinks that she hates him, and he shows up and starts talking to her, and she says, like, I know what I would want to say, but you don't want to hear it. I'm like, that is like something that you say to somebody that you've had a lot of arguments with, with this, like, arguing over the same thing. And I was like, oh, right, like, Poseidon is definitely a scared little baby of his older brother. He is in general, mythology and on the show, and so he would be afraid to stand up to Zeus, and Sally doesn't care. Especially for like her child, she'll do whatever and say whatever. And so when I thought of that, I was like, oh, right, like, that has to be when she figured that out. Maybe Poseidon told her about it. Maybe she just realized it from hearing them talk about magical things, because I feel like Sally is just how Sally is, that she would have had to figure all that out on her own. Like, just figuring things out by, like, seeing how people respond to her and what's going on. Now that she realized at that point that she could see through the mist and stuff like that. I feel like everything she ever figured out to help Percy was literally her just, like, scraping stuff together. Because nobody would have helped her.
Exactly. And another thing with this, like, reread of the Lightning Thief is I didn't realize how big of an antagonist that Zeus is in the book, because I've already talked, like, I made a video about how there's lightning strikes all around them while they're being chased by the Minotaur. The bus, after the whole episode with the Furies and them attacking them, also gets struck by lightning, and I forgot about that. So that's another big thing. But yeah,
that's why like the end of the book / show, because Percy did the same thing on the show when he goes to like confront Zeus by going to Olympus. That's why they're like, are you sure you want to do this? You might die. Like, and on the show, like, you know, they have Annabeth literally say like, he's going to kill you. And he's like, I have to go anyway. But that's why that scene is such like a ballsy thing for Percy to do, because yeah, Zeus is the one going after him that entire season on the show and in the books. It's just he's the biggest villain, really, because we don't really know who the villain is. It's him. Like, he's the one who thinks that somehow this 12-year-old little baby child has stolen something of his, and it's just stupid anyway. Like, it shows how much he doesn't care, because it's like, do you really think this kid who just found out that he was a demigod somehow broke into Olympus of all places and stole your lightning bolt without anybody noticing? Like, what powers do you think Poseidon gave him? That's ridiculous to think that he could figure that out on his own. And even if you wanted to believe that he could, like, if he somehow knew about everything and they were like lying about him just figuring it out, he's still a 12-year-old kid. It's hard to believe that he could pull, like, Luke didn't even pull that off. Like, Ares caught him. He was just able to manipulate him long enough to not, like, actually get caught. But he still got caught, and he's a full ass like adult when he's doing that. And he got caught, much less a tiny little baby that's in 7th grade. He definitely wouldn't be able to do it. But yeah, he's honestly the biggest villain, especially in the first book. They back off a little bit on that as the books go on. But in the first one, he takes place for Kronos because we don't know about him yet. And so I remember the first time I read the book, I thought that the scenes where you see like some mysterious person talking to somebody else, I thought that was like Zeus, because I didn't remember who Kronos was. And so I thought that was just Zeus the whole time. And they definitely set him up to be the one doing it, instead of it actually being Kronos at the end. That's why Percy's showing up and telling him, like, your family hates you. Everyone is just afraid of you. But as soon as they get tired of that, they're going to turn against you because you're a horrible father, is one of my favorite scenes ever.
Your family is a mess. They don't support you because they love you. They obey because they're afraid. Ares, your son, he turned on you the moment someone stronger showed up. Do you really think he'll be the last? How afraid of you do you think they'll be when your dad shows up looking to put you back in your place?
Yeah.
Especially the TV show version. He just, like, goes in on him. And I'm like, yeah, that's the least that man deserves.
Pretty much. I also wanted to read one thing from one of the chapters, and this is something, it almost makes me wish we actually would have reread the books when we were doing our coverage of season 1, because I had mentioned, like, what is the golden age supposed to be like, what is it described as, but here's what Chiron says about it. Percy asks Chiron, when you say the gods are immortal, I mean, there was a time before them, right? And he says 4 ages before them, actually. The time of the Titans was the 4th age, sometimes called the Golden Age, which is definitely a misnomer. This time, the time of Western civilization and rule of Zeus is the 5th age. So what was it like before the gods? Chiron pursed his lips. Even I am not old enough to remember that, child, but I know it was a time of darkness and savagery for mortals. Kronos, the lord of the Titans, called his reign the Golden Age because men lived innocent and free of all knowledge, but that was mere propaganda. The Titan King cared nothing for your kind except as appetizers or a source of cheap entertainment. It was only in the early reign of Lord Zeus, when Prometheus, the good Titan, brought fire to mankind, that your species began to progress, and even then Prometheus was branded a radical thinker. Zeus punished him severely, as you may recall, of course. Eventually the gods warmed to humans and Western civilization was born. So Chiron's blatantly saying, the Golden Age wasn't so golden, Percy. you guys were in darkness. I mean, I think for us, like knowing, at least a little bit about prehistory, we think like cavemen who don't have any sort of tools or ways to protect themselves really, and are really just surviving. And that's what I think is supposed to be brought to mind. And it also kind of makes you think, because that would be a time before, like there's writing, any sort of record keeping. So you can make it sound however you want. Like you could make it sound like, oh, of course, people didn't have to farm to get food. They didn't have to hunt. It just came to them. Like,
I know I could depend on Chiron for seeing through his dad's nonsense and knowing that it wasn't actually as perfect as he said it was. Yeah. We could have read it back then, but I really didn't want to read Percy getting gaslit. That's really what it was, is that I remembered how horrible the first couple chapters are with that, and I just didn't want to read him getting gaslit by literally everyone. Like everyone that he talks to is gaslighting him somehow, and I just didn't want to do that, and so we just skipped it. But I guess you're reading it now, so that counts.
So we basically finished the entire war. We're on chapter 22. I am dumped, which basically is like the confirmation of what happens to Rachel. So at first Percy is like, she stole my Pegasus. We got to go and get Blackjack. But then also, like, through talking to Annabeth, the worry becomes, wait a second, but the dragon, like, even if she can see camp and she gets to the borders, Peleus is going to get her. And so they're kind of rushing in that way, because they think that she's in danger if she tries to cross camp borders. And they're having trouble figuring out a mode of transportation at first because all the Pegasi have gone. Like the mortals are all awake and confused at like what happened in the city. They basically, and the party ponies are all like partied out and gone, because Percy even says, I would have taken one of them, but like we couldn't find them. So he goes even to Nico, is like, hey, can you figure out some like skeletal horses or something? And Nico's like, I'm too tired now. Like,
yeah, he can't do anything.
Yeah. So he ends up calling up the hippocampi. And I think this will be important to our Dark Percy discussion later. But here's what he's thinking as he's realizing he's going to have to summon them. Even with the sand dollar, I'd given the East River for a magic cleaning. The water here was pretty polluted. I didn't want to make any sea animals sick, but they came to my call. He feels guilty, even though like this is an emergency. And he does tell them like, hey, it's an emergency. I'm so sorry, you guys. But this kid is so sensitive that he's like, I'm going to have to put these poor Pegasi in this polluted ass river.
And they're like, it's fine. Like, you can tell from the way that the sea creatures talk to him, like, he never asks them for things like that unless he really needs it. And they're just always happy to help, like, consistently throughout all the books. They're always like, oh, hi, it's Percy. Can I talk to you? Can I assist you? Do you need help?
Exactly, because like a bunch of them come up when he does that. One of which being Rainbow, and he has a conversation with Rainbow. I do think it's an interesting choice on Rick's part that we get Blackjack's monologue, or like what he's saying to Percy, even if it's only in Percy's head. With this hippocampi one, there's the implication of what the hippocampus is saying to Percy, but it's not actually written out. So I thought that was a little interesting choice, and maybe it's just supposed to show a greater connection with Blackjack. I'm not sure. But yeah, Rainbow comes up. He says, how's it going? And it says that Rainbow made a complaint. And he says, yeah, I'm sorry, but it's an emergency. We need to get to camp. And then he asks about Tyson. And he's like, oh, Tyson's fine. I'm sorry he's not here. He's a big general now in the Cyclops army. And he lets out a big neigh. And Percy's like, I'm sure he'll bring you apples. Okay, but now we need a ride. And so they take the hippocampi back to camp. Let's see. When they beach, it's surprisingly peaceful compared to the city they just left. And they run into they run towards the big house, which has a green light, which of course scares them because that's exactly what it looked like in the vision that they had about, or vision that Percy had about May. And they run into Blackjack, who says, "Don't blame me, boss. The weird girl made me do it." I love that. And we find Rachel standing at the bottom of the porch at the big house with her arms out. And it's basically, she's going through the process of accepting the Oracle of Delphi. And Percy's like, "Wait, Chiron, didn't you tell her this is a bad idea? Like, didn't you explain?" He's like, "I did explain things, and I invited her here." And so, let's see. The mist starts swirling around Rachel. She says, "It's all right. This is why I came. You'll be destroyed. This is where I belong, Percy. I finally understand why." And he's scared because he's like, "I know this is the exact same thing that happened with May." But all he can really do is sit there and watch. Eventually, a blonde dude in a white toga with sunglasses and a cocky smile comes out, Apollo, and he looks at Percy, gives him a wink, and he says, "Rachel Elizabeth Dare, you have the gift of prophecy, but it is also a curse. Are you sure you want this?" And she nods and says, "It's my destiny. Do you accept the risks?" "I do." "Then proceed." And she says, "I accept this role. I pledge myself to Apollo, god of oracles. I open my eyes to the future and embrace the past. I accept the spirit of Delphi, voice of the gods, speaker of riddles, seer of fate." And it feels like a rehearsed speech, and Percy's like, "I have no idea how she knew exactly what to say." Bro, she's a prophetess. But yeah, that's how she knew. So the mummy comes out, and essentially the spirit of the oracle transfers from the mummy, which then is allowed to finally rest and turns into dust. And it does go into Rachel. It looks scary at first, and in fact, Nico even says of this process, "I could see you dying, like I could see your life force leaving you." But Apollo warns them like not to try to interfere, because he's like, "This is the most important part of it. Like, the oracle has to accept her as a vessel." Which I'm guessing is probably the part that May ended up getting her unfortunate consequences in. And anyways, so the oracle does take, and she at once lets out another great prophecy, that being, 7 half-blood shall answer the call. To storm or fire the world must fall, an oath to keep with a final breath, and foes bear arms to the doors of death. She doesn't remember saying this after it happens. The way Apollo explains it is, the spirit will only speak through you occasionally. The rest of the time, our Rachel will be much as she has always been. And you know, the kids are freaking out, like, "Not another prophecy, come on, we just fixed this prophecy." But Apollo's like, "We don't know when this is going to be. It took 70 years from the time that the prophecy about this time was spoken, so it could not even be in your lifetime." Which of course is probably not what's going to happen. As we know, the Heroes of Olympus series does exist. But yeah, let's see. So Rachel kind of also once again goes through the whole like breakup routine with Percy of like, "We're not really in a relationship, but we were kind of getting there, and I'm sorry. This is my destiny." And the thing that she ends that conversation with is, "And I don't have to see the future to tell you what to do now, do I?" And he says no. And I kind of love that this is how she bows out of the pseudo love triangle we have, where Percy's like, "I'm too busy to be interested in girls, but also like I do kind of have feelings for these two girls that are around me, and they have feelings for me clearly, and they don't like each other because of it." It's kind of funny that she's like, "It's Annabeth's turn. Bye."
Yeah. I thought it was funny during this part. I was like picturing like Percy's anxiety, like if he just like kept going way up and then go way up and going way down. I was like, Jesus Christ, child, just like take a deep breath before you pass out or something. During that whole part with Rachel, with him being so scared that something was going to go wrong. But I feel like the love triangles in this book series, I call them love triangles because they aren't really love triangles. There's always like one person that isn't really doing anything. They're just kind of, they just happen to be there or whatever. Like I don't see Luke and Percy and Annabeth as one because Luke is being a freak and and Percy is just like basically waiting that situation out until it's over. And the same kind of thing with like Rachel. Rachel likes Percy, but I don't think she necessarily thought that anything serious was actually going to happen there. Because it just kind of, there are all these other things going on all the time. But either way, it's always nice to have Rachel being the one giving them their horrible prophecies instead of a mummy, and just have that finally fixed after all this time. Thanks for nothing, Hades.
Yeah, actually, that reminded me. Of course, it was Reddit that I saw it on, but someone was like, "Why do people deny that Luke ever had romantic feelings for Annabeth?" And it's not necessarily that it didn't turn romantic in a weird, twisted way towards the end, because I do think that like final "did you love me" bullshit, the like run away with me bullshit, I do think that was him realizing like this is the only person who still actually cares about me, and like that's what he was latching on to. But their bond is so filled with random trauma that it's not really, that I don't want to say it's not real, but it's not ever what either of them think it is, because they both are just like so enmeshed and so used to each other that I think both of them just get confused at where they lie with each other.
Well, I would say people like Luke, one thing that's annoying with them, or how people talk about them, is that they don't really go about relationships the way that most people do. They see somebody that can like get them something. Like they have a need that they want met, and so they want that. Like when you have to tell me if this is true or not, but I assume that when people usually want to be in a relationship with somebody romantically, that is not purely like, oh, I think this person would be like, would do things for me that I want or would make me feel good or whatever. There's like more to it than that. But with people like Luke, there isn't. And so like for him, he had a weird whatever thing with Thalia until she probably gets mad at him right before she dies and then tries to kill him. And so that's obviously not going to happen. And so Annabeth is kind of the next person that he thinks will never tell him no. Like that's honestly the main thing I think with him, is that he knows that he has her like completely, and that she is like the one person that still thinks that he's worth anything at all, and will like talk to him when literally nobody else wants anything to do with him anymore. And so I think that's where, and that is like enough for somebody like Luke to like, you know, be like, oh, she loves me and all this kind of stuff. Like how he plays with his looks with Silena and with other people like that. That's what he uses that stuff for. And so that's the closest I think Luke would get to having like any sort of feelings for somebody. It's still like predatory because it's obviously not really real. It's more about just wanting somebody who just likes him at all. And that's literally only Annabeth, pretty much. Even the people on his side don't actually really like him. They just have to deal with him because he's the one who's holding Kronos inside of his body, so they have no choice.
Yeah.
But it's not like they're like, oh, I'm so glad that I join you or anything like that. But yeah, that's how I see that. And for Annabeth, it makes a lot of sense why she would feel like that, because he's manipulating her and he knows that he's an important person for her. He knows all that stuff. He knows that she, you know, she feels like he's like safety in some way, which of course is horrible because he's the most unsafe person in this whole book series, even in like future series, that's still him. He's the most unsafe one out of everybody. But because he was the one that talked to her when she was 7, she thinks that that's him, and she can't let go of that for the longest time.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense from her perspective. Why? Because she's the victim.
Answer. It's just that Luke is a manipulative person, and love is a form of manipulation for him. I'm not saying he can't ever love, but I mean, even when you think about how he treated May, there's a type of coldness to it where it makes you wonder if there is, I don't know. I don't love diagnosing people with a personality disorder, but it feels like he's so disconnected to people that he just doesn't feel that, you know?
Yeah, and I will say, like, people sometimes, when I say, like, people like Luke, I mean people who are very selfish and are lacking empathy for other people, where they can only see other people in the way that they can use them to get things that they want, and they don't really see you. Like, most of the time when you think about, like, I could say this thing or do this thing to this person to get something from them, but you, like, most of the time people feel bad about the idea of, like, saying something that you know will hurt them or something like that, because you just have those sort of ideas. There are some people out there that just don't, for whatever reason. I don't like to try to figure out why, because it feels very, like, I don't like how people talk about personality disorders in general. And
Yeah.
so people who do those things don't necessarily have personality disorders. I don't think that my dad had one. I think he was, the way I describe that is, I think he was the evil kind of autistic, which is the kind of autistic person that is lacking empathy. Never, because that is, sometimes autistic people don't feel as much empathy, not because there's something inherently wrong with us. It's just part of, is some of the types of autism that sometimes happen. Sometimes we have too much, like I do. But sometimes you don't feel it the way that other people do. And his, like, sense of justice was getting, like, his needs met. And so those two things together means you will do anything in order to get what you want. And I don't think he, like, had a personality disorder. I'm not even, people thought he might be bipolar, and maybe he was, but I'm not even sure if he was or not. He was diagnosed with that, but who knows? I will never know about that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's
But
not necessarily important, right?
no.
It's more just the recognition that there's something in him where he doesn't feel this about anybody. You know, like he doesn't seem to have empathy for anybody.
Yeah, like, he is so focused on the things that he's missing that is, like, the number one goal, and anything else that anyone else has going on with them just, like, doesn't compare to him. And that's mainly the thing with Luke. It's not worth the time to, like, figure out necessarily, like, why or anything like that, because there is no real answer. Sometimes people just end up like that. They don't have anybody to stop them when they kind of are forming their personality that way. It just happens, and who knows? And it's one of those things you're never going to have an answer. In the same way with Luke, there's lots of other kids at camp that had just as bad of childhood situations as he did, and they didn't end up like that at all. It was just him, basically. He was the only one that ended up like that. Nobody else was willing to do the stuff. Like, even the people on his side, like Ethan and stuff, once they saw, like, the things they would actually have to do, they started changing their minds because they didn't actually want to do it. He was the only one that was like, yeah, I'll kill kids that I'm friends with. I don't care. As long as I get to be in power, I don't care if I kill my friends. Most people aren't able to do things like that, but he didn't care. But that's why I love everyone loves posting the Not Like Us song when they talk about Luke. Because that is what's going on there. He's using his good looks to get, like, young girls to give him the time of day when they normally wouldn't, if they were a little bit older and realize that he's just a punk. And, like, one thing that I am really going to look forward to when we read Heroes of Olympus books is that somewhere, I think it's it has to be in Mark of Athena, because Annabeth doesn't have, like, a perspective chapter until Mark of Athena. That's one of the things I remember about those books. But there's parts in her chapters where she's thinking about Luke being tortured in the underworld. Mm-hmm. And so that whole thing she said of, oh, you're going to end up in Elysium. No. She changes her mind about that. Once she has like more time to actually stop and think about what he did, she doesn't feel that way about him anymore. Every other time that he ever comes up in those books is her talking about how scary he was and how glad she is that she was able to get away from him. And that's in character. When you're groomed, you don't really realize it. It takes time after they're gone for you to really like recognize like, wow, that person was really scary and they definitely could have killed me. Or done something just as bad to me, and I somehow got away from it without that happening, thank God. But she literally thinks about that in like Mark of Athena and stuff, about how glad she is that he's being tortured in the underworld and how scary and creepy of a person he is. So she even changes her mind about him as more time goes on.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring that up because, I saw that on Reddit and I was like, there's reasons, kid. You're probably a child. It's okay.
Yeah. I pretty much assume anyone who I ever see post that is like, why are people saying that Silena is a hero when isn't she something else? I'm like, you have to be under the age of 18.
Yeah, which is a great segue to bring us back to the book. But so really quick note about Rachel before we move on to the burial that they do, which is that she's not going to be put in the attic of the big house. That's kind of the next big thing. Is they're like, we'll just put her in a guest room until we figure out something else. And Apollo says, I'm thinking a cave in the hills with torches, big purple curtain over the entrance, really mysterious. But inside, totally decked out pad with a game room and one of those home theater systems.
You go for it, Apollo.
Yeah. Okay, but then we get to they host the funerals for the fallen demigods, and Silena is the first one that Percy mentions. Selena's shroud was hot pink but embroidered with an electric spear. The Ares and Aphrodite cabins both claimed her as hero and lit the shroud together. No one mentioned the word spy. That secret burned to ashes as the designer perfume smoke drifted into the sky. And that is important because Clarice says it right away when she dies, like she was a hero, everybody, like a hero. And Percy also does the same exact thing when the Stroll brothers ask, like, we heard something about her being a spy. He's like, no, she was a hero. And I love that everybody around her has that empathy for her. I also love that the Ares cabin did claim her, just like because they followed that girl into battle. Like there's something that I think, especially as children of Ares, made them feel bonded to her after that.
Yeah, and it is kind of like a whole Aphrodite Ares thing. They have the most toxic relationship ever, but in mythology. But in this case, this is like a good way of showing it. And either way, like I like that Rick gives people no room whatsoever. That there is a person in the Here's Olympus books that questions that, which is honestly normal in situations like that when you go through big trauma like that. Some people feel that way. But when it comes to this book series ending like this, I'm really glad that he doesn't give like the audience any room like that to like question, and just makes it very clear that if you're reading this book and you think that Silena is wrong or bad and isn't like a huge victim and does like a very heroic act in that last scene, then you're wrong, because literally all of your favorite characters are saying that she is. And it's a very clear way to like tell your audience what they should be feeling. And so if you're not feeling that, you should be thinking about why you're blaming Silena. And it's just like, he doesn't have to do that. Like, those like cheesy scenes. He doesn't have to do one like that though, because everyone just is calling her a hero. So if you're reading this book and you're like, why would she be a hero? It makes you think more about why they would feel that way about her. And, I appreciate that. I found a bunch of Reddit posts of people being like, Rick doesn't let you think this way about her, but I think blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, there's a reason for that. And I'm like, all those posts, I'm like, you have to be like 15 and younger who is saying that, because anyone older than that, I think, would realize reading what happened, how she was a huge victim of all of that, and not the one actually being blamed. Like, I saw this video yesterday of somebody that annoys me, that they were talking about the Court of the Dead book. And one of the big stories that I know is in that book, from people just talking about it, that I was like, oh, this is really interesting, is that they have like the Minotaur in that book. I forget the name they give him. But
Arion, I think.
Yeah. And they have, and a big storyline in the book is that the Minotaur shows up and is like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he was like, Kronos and all these other people were like, contracting me to do these things against demigods. But now that I have like a chance to decide for myself, I don't want to do this anymore. And I saw somebody like mad about that, like being like, you really expect me to believe that Minotaur was just like helpless to be? I'm like, yes, I do. And like, honestly, if like, just for me to have like my endless like moments about Luke's damage in this world, the Minotaur being contracted to kill demigods is Luke's fault, because Kronos was the one that was doing that. And the only reason that Kronos was ever able to do anything was because Luke was working with him, because he doesn't have a body. And so if Luke isn't willing to help him, he's not doing anything. And so even the book that just came out, the reason why the Minotaur has to be doing this now is because Luke let Kronos use these people to do these horrible things. And like, of course, somebody like the Minotaur would realize later on, like, I don't want to actually hurt these kids, though. Now that I have time to like think about what I was actually doing, there's no scary person telling me to make me do this anymore.
Yeah.
So why not stop? And like, so many people who read that book are like, I don't know how Percy would feel about it. I'm like, I do. He would be really excited about the Minotaur not wanting to hurt anybody anymore, and would be fine with it.
I mean,
and would be happy.
We talked during our Cersei read about like how we didn't like the Minotaur's treatment in that. Same exact Minotaur. There's only one. Like there's not a species. It's one person, Asterion. And like, it is unfair that he's automatically treated like this feral beast, especially after they find a way to calm him down. And we had said that all along. We were like, so for Ariadne going and visiting her brother in the labyrinth, this falls kind of in line with some of those things we were saying. And so it makes me even more excited to read it, that like, wow, someone else saw the Minotaur and thought this. Like, poor kid didn't ask to be born that way.
And it's just like the obvious cause and effect of like scapegoat, like not scapegoat, cycle breaking things. Is that's like, I feel like that's like the reaction those people had to the Minotaur. I feel like that's how some people might react if they ever didn't know me and knew that I still talk to my mom. They might have that sort of reaction of like, how could you still talk to her? And I'd be like, because I do, fuck off. But that's generally how people see that, is they are like, I can't imagine how you could do that. And I'm like, I don't care that you can't imagine, because I can, because it's my life. But it's that sort of a thing of, I don't care. Like, I don't care if people did it. Like, yeah, obviously people hurting me isn't nice, but if you realize what you did was wrong, and you recognize what it was, and you apologize, and then you actually follow through with like changing your behavior. I would be the horrible person if I see somebody doing that and I still decide that because of something you did in the past, that I'm not even going to give you the chance to prove that you've changed. You don't have to have like a relationship with that person or whatever if you don't really want to. I do, but it's also a thing of, what is the point? Like, what is the point of all of this if somebody realizes that they made a mistake and want to change, and they're actually following through with it? What is the point of like cutting that person out of your life just because they hurt you in the past? Like, I don't care, as long as they realize that they did it and realize that they did it and are sorry about it. That's all most people are looking for.
Yeah.
And so with the Minotaur, that's all it is. Like, yeah, I killed demigods, but it was because of this huge system of people like Kronos using me, and I felt like I couldn't tell them no, which of course, like, how could you tell somebody like Kronos no? And so now that he has a choice and realizes that the demigods would accept him, if he did, by Percy and Annabeth and Will and Nico being in Tartarus and telling them that they would accept them, then why not do it? Like,
Yeah.
that's silly. That's like if they didn't accept Bob. Bob's the sweetest.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, so the other okay, so it's kind of funny that people have that reaction to Selena and how Selena's discussed post, the reveal. But Ethan, like, he never switches to the, like, not really, right? At the
Mm-hmm.
very end, yes, he tries to stab Kronos, but he never fully joins the demigod side. And yet he also gets a burial shroud. It says he gets buried with black silk, a logo of swords crossed under a set of scales. And they do the same thing that for him that they do for every other demigod at camp. But people don't have the same smoke for him. And it's just like, I don't get it, And I'm not saying that he deserves it, but I'm saying, like, here's somebody who legitimately was on the other side. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know,
and people love Ethan.
yeah,
Um, I feel like it's misogyny.
probably.
That's the
That's
only thing I can
probably
think
it.
of just fan wise, of why fans would be harder on Selena than they would be on Ethan. Maybe you could maybe say because Selena was at camp with them and knew them when Ethan didn't. But
Mm-hmm.
still, people really like Ethan. Like, it is so funny. The videos that I did about Ethan in like months and months ago, some people still like those videos like every couple days. And every once in a while, like an Ethan Nakamura like fan account will see one of them and leave a comment about like how excited they are seeing me talk about him. Um, and so like people really love Ethan. Like as when they announced season 1 of the show, I saw people cosplaying as Ethan already when season 1 was airing because they're so excited about seeing him like many years in the future. And so it is a weird thing that like, yeah, Ethan realized like I don't want to actually kill Percy right now. What if I don't do this? And this doesn't actually seem like that good of an idea at the
Mm-hmm.
very end. But he didn't completely, he never went back to camp. He died before he could do that. But still, if he hadn't done that, then Luke wouldn't have been able to, kill himself um, the way that he needed to. But he still like helped them a lot by making that happen and stopping Kronos in his tracks in that way, and
Mm-hmm.
also just showing how he didn't care about anybody or anything.
Yeah.
I think that helped Luke finally see like, okay, he's like he really, really, really does not care about me. It took him a while, but he finally got it right at the very end. Um, but still, he gets an. I'm glad that he had a shroud at camp because I didn't remember that they did that. But I'm
Yeah.
glad that they did that because one of my favorite. Now that we've gotten this far, I can say this. One of my favorite theories that I go with is that Ethan is actually the hero of the prophecy.
The
Um, be,
choice.
yeah, because it not that is not Luke. That is actually Ethan, and it's fun because you can legitimately think that because he also died by a cursed weapon, and it was his own weapon that he dies from when it gets like flown back at him when he turns against Kronos. But still, all the things from the prophecy also make sense for him, and he actually stands for something that like means something. And
Yeah.
so that's one of people's favorite things is to say that, like, well, if we're gonna call like the hero of the prophecy an actual hero, which like is arguable because the heroes of the gods are not actually heroes. Like, would
Mm-hmm.
you call Achilles or Odysseus when Clarice is acting like them in the second and fifth book, or Heracles and when he does to Zoe? Would you call them heroes in like a way we call them heroes? Like, no. And so calling Luke a hero of the gods is kind of insulting him. Honestly, it's not like a legitimate like you're a hero and we're
Yeah.
going to look up to you one day kind of thing. But if you do want to see that word used and you can't stomach the idea of Luke being called a hero in any context, just call Ethan a hero.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It works just the same.
Exactly. Let's see. We have a Grover Juniper reunion happens after the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
That everybody's watching and loving. Um,
Well,
let's
but
see.
Percy's the sweetheart. He says that it reminds him of Selena and Charlie, and it makes him sad. I'm like, oh, honey.
Let's see. Nico ends up sitting at the main table with Mr. D and Chiron, and nobody's like mad at it. Everybody's happy, and a lot of people are even going up to him and like, "Great fight, bro!" Like, welcoming him in. Which that was part of Hades' curse, if you remember, was once my children are accepted as heroes. So it's kind of interesting. Let's see. And then after they're having like dinner, Annabeth comes up with a cupcake and she reminds Percy like it's actually your birthday today. It's August 18th. Happy birthday. And she has this like it's a blue cupcake, but he can tell that Tyson helped with it because he's like it looks like a chocolate brick with extra blue cement.
That, oh my god, I have to tell this story whenever people bring up like bad cooking things, because this is the funniest like cooking mistake I've ever seen in my life. The first year when we did Christmas, the first year when my mom and I weren't talking anymore, first off, I made my sister make me Percy Jackson cookies, and she had no idea that they were Percy Jackson cookies. I just found a recipe for like those blue monster cookies that people make online. They call them monster cookies. And I just told her, can we have these on Christmas? And she made them. And in my head, I'm like, oh, they're Percy Jackson cookies. And they just like made me happy. She had no idea what she was making. But the funny like cooking story is her boyfriend was trying to make, we were trying to make like taquitos. And he put he was trying to put the chicken in like their food processor, and so that he could like shred it up and stuff, and somehow processed it for too long that it turned liquid. Like it was literally liquid. And we walk into the kitchen and he's like trying to take it out of the food processor and put it in like a pan, like pan frying on the stove, and trying to somehow turn it back into like a solid form. And every time we tell that story, I'm like, do you know that chicken can change form and then it can liquefy? It's like that special. It's just the funniest story ever. That's what this reminded me of looking at that. Like that was the funniest meal we've ever eaten. We just ate like a ton of refried beans because none of them turned out because the chicken turned liquid. We couldn't use any of it.
Must have been juicy, honestly, to just like completely liquefy.
That was really funny. That was so funny. Like that time he was making it, he started putting it in like their blender. And I was looking through like their living room and I'm like, don't you guys have a food processor? And the two of them just like freeze. And they're like, we do have a food processor. I was like, oh my god, why do I know what you have more than you know what you have? That was so funny. But yeah, I liked this part is really cute with Annabeth, and also the fact that this is his birthday.
Yeah.
Like Percy
didn't realize it.
No, Percy never likes his birthday. I forget what future book. I think it's the ones that recently have come out, the senior year ones, where he's like just a walking thing of complex PTSD. And I'm pretty sure in one of those recent books he talks about how I don't really like my birthday because I don't have that many friends, and a lot of the friends that I have from camp aren't in town anymore during the summertime, and I also then have to think about what happened on my birthday. But yeah, he doesn't like his birthday, which is a very abused child thing to do. I don't like my birthday either. I get like weirdly depressed every year around my birthday, and I'm not even sure why I'm depressed. I just am. Like every year I'm like, I don't know why I'm so sad, but I just am sad. But yeah, that sucks. That's his 16th birthday. And so now on his birthday every year, that's like the first thing that will probably always pop in his head is all of this stuff. That happened on his birthday.
Buried my friends on my birthday. Like
yeah. But it's it just like leads up to the stuff with him and Annabeth, of course.
Yes. So this is really cute. How them finally getting together happens. So he decides to lead with so when I was doing the Achilles curse, you were my anchor. Telling her that he was supposed to think of something that wanted to make him stay mortal, and then he also ties that into, and then in Olympus, when I was given this chance at immortality, and she's like, oh, so you wanted to, and he says, well, maybe a little, but I didn't, because I thought I didn't want things to stay the same for eternity, because things could always get better, and I was thinking. And she says, anyone in particular? And basically, like, they don't ever actually say it because she's just giving him a hard time. And he's like, you are so not making this easy for me. And she says, I'm never, ever going to make things easy for you, Seaweed Brain. Get used to it. And then she kisses him.
Yeah.
It's
I remember there is another podcast that had their title was like, are they even dating? Because they didn't even like officially say it, but yes, they are.
Yeah.
But that's just like a way that fits the two of them to talk about that whole thing, because there's no question that they would want to. It was purely just like Luke was terrorizing them. Percy didn't even know if he was going to survive his birthday. And now that both of those things are gone, now they can do whatever they want. And now that's what they're going to do now. I always like their story that I know sometimes people speculate that they could have gotten together in a different book, but really, this is the only time where they could have, because they needed to work through all of their personal character development stuff. And the reward for that is them getting together. But they have to work through all that stuff first in the first five books to get to that point.
Exactly.
Like even just like Annabeth in this book earlier on in the beginning, when they first go to Olympus and Hermes is horrible to her, before that or after that happens, she realizes how like she's always thinking about Luke, and she finally actually sees like that Percy is like sees what that's like for him. And it's like those are the sort of things that she has to know before they could ever get in a relationship where it'd actually be healthy for both of them. And now it is. Now they're both excited for the future. Thought it was really sweet that the way that Percy thought about it was like things could always get better instead of things could get worse. Instead, it's things could get better. And so why would I want to stop now when things are finally turning around and everything is actually going to maybe be better now?
Yeah. So they're interrupted because apparently there was a bunch of people eavesdropping and watching them. And so it's like Clarice and a bunch of other kids. They decide that they're going to carry them off into the canoe lake. But Percy has the last laugh because of his water powers. He's like, we're just going to stay down here in a bubble and make out. Like,
yep. We can stay down here and kiss and you guys can't stop us. And they're like, are they going to come back up? No.
Nope.
It's Percy. They don't have to.
Yeah. Then we get to the last chapter, chapter 23. We say goodbye, sort of. So Grover is busy at work sending seekers to find new half-bloods, and they're coming in, and the way that it's said is like, most of them make it in. It's like, we have to think there's still monsters going after them to the point where some of them are not making it in still. But it seems like the gods are keeping on their promise of protecting them, of like even just allowing them to be found, because now they're finding ones not just in America but in other countries. But Annabeth and Chiron keep talking about adding more and potentially adding a new wing, so this just keeps filling out. It went from a U shape to a rectangle is how he describes it. After this, we have a conversation with Poseidon. So Poseidon shows up just like he's fishing off of the or into the Long Island Sound from Camp Half-Blood, and he comes to thank Percy. Percy says, "Thank me, you came to my rescue." "Yes, and I got my palace destroyed in the process, but you know, palaces can be rebuilt. I've gotten so many thank you cards from the other gods, even Ares wrote one, though I think Hera forced him to. It's rather gratifying, so thank you. I suppose even the gods can learn new tricks." So they get to the last night. He notices Hestia there. When they wake up in the morning, everybody's saying their goodbyes. So Annabeth and Rachel actually have a really sweet goodbye where they hug each other and seem to be getting along.
And he's like, Rachel, thank God.
Yes. Rachel's nervous because she is going to Clarion Girls Academy anyway. she's going to be there in the school year and she's going to come back in the summer to fulfill her oracle duties. But she's like nervous because she's like, what if someone asked me about the Pythagorean theorem in math class, and then I say the Pythagorean theorem shall be problem 2 and start spouting off in prophecy. So it's kind of cute, but her and Annabeth leaving on a good note, I think, was a great way to wrap that up. Because it really is a situation of like, I could see them being friends. And
they are.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like, so I got cheated on in high school. It's like one of my lore things that I drop every once in a while. That girl could have been my friend. Like, honestly, we had so much in common that we could have been friends. And it's kind of weird how things happen like that. I mean, Hope Girlie's doing fine out in the world somewhere. She locked down her Instagram, so I can't creep anymore. I knew what the handle was for a while, but at some point she locked it down. I was like, okay, have a nice life.
And one part, just because we're going to go into reading Heroes of Olympus after this, is that everyone else is leaving, but Percy and Annabeth are some of the people that are staying.
Yeah, they're going to be nearby in New York. And so Percy, that's why it's goodbye, sort of, is because Percy and Annabeth are going to still be close. Annabeth got her parents to agree to let her be at a boarding school in New York so that she can work on Olympus.
And Percy for the first time is going back to a school because Paul is literally Jesus, but that he somehow got them to let him come back.
Exactly. So yeah, he was talking about going to a school for 2 years in a row for the first time ever, pretty much. The other thing is, it's really cute what he says about their relationship here, him and Annabeth's relationship, because they've had 2 weeks together at camp, but now they have to go back into the real world. Let's see. She laced her fingers through mine. I remembered what she told me in New York about building something permanent, and I thought, just maybe we were off to a good start. So he's already like, I'm locked in with this girlie for life. I'm gonna be her something permanent. And it's so sweet. It's like, we're gonna get into the whole Dark Percy discussion, but like, this is who he is. He's sweet. He cares about people. He cares about animals.
He cares about everybody, and that's why like it was worth it for them to wait to get together, because they've worked through all of their stuff like separately and together. So now they're just ready to be together and happy. Because the problem with them is never their relationship. It's all these other things that are happening. Like, I even, on one of the Instagram accounts that we both like to follow that posts like little snippets of scenes and stuff, one of them posts this scene, and I don't remember what Heroes of Olympus book this is in, but it's probably Mark of Athena, honestly. But it's the two of them when they're on like the Argo 2 is what they call it, the big ship in that book that they make. And they're explaining, somebody is explaining to the two of them that there's like a room in it where it's like a glass floor, so they can see like the ocean underneath. And Percy and Annabeth is like, come here, Percy. And they both just like sit there by like the glass and just like stare at the water while all the other kids are like walking around and talking about like serious plans. And I'm like, they are adorable.
Yeah.
That's like Annabeth just like wanting to have like a little like nice like date time with Percy in the middle of all of that craziness. That's just how they are all the time. Now that they've worked through all of that stuff is over, and now they're just happy. And my favorite line is that the last line of this is that he, for once, I don't look back, because he doesn't have anything to be afraid of for 4 months.
Yeah. So I know it's going to be short-lived, but yeah, they talk briefly about the second great prophecy that they hear about. And then it's like, whatever, I'm leaving, and I'm happy that I'm leaving this time because I know I'm coming back because I have Annabeth. There's something very like, I love the way that Rick tied it up.
And the only other thing I wanted to say just for the end of this book and the end of this series is, it like reading it taking place, it just makes Like, I love how Percy says, like, this is the best 2 weeks of my life. Like, seeing all the things that he's always wanted to happen at camp finally happening in front of him, and the gods, like, actually following through with what he wanted and things like that. But it is, like, a whole thing of, yeah, you can understand why in Heroes of Olympus things are set up like they are with him, that him being gone is such a scary thing for them. Because, like, imagine you, like, I'm just imagining, like, the other kids at camp. You, like, they come back from Olympus and they all go back to camp and they find out that, like, Percy's best friend is the Lord of the Wild. And he is now, like, Pan, basically, and is going to be traveling around the world doing that stuff. His girlfriend is rebuilding, like, the architect of Olympus. His brother is, like, a really big, like, military person now for like Poseidon and Cyclops and stuff. And then they ask, like, oh, what did you get? And he's like, I didn't get anything. I got you guys stuff. And it's like, no wonder why they freaking worship him. Like, he could have gotten anything. And especially when they find out that he turned down being a god and instead was like, what if instead you, like, actually helped your children? No wonder why they are so scared when he's gone, because he's the one that helps them. Not only with how he helps them in this book, like, he handles everything. He's the one in charge of everything and helps them feel like they can do it.
Yeah.
That's why that whole series is so interesting, is because him being gone scares them so much. And it's like, well, no wonder. If I was those kids too, I would do anything for Percy after this one book, much less all the other ones too. Him being gone, like, Hera knew what she was doing when she did that.
Yeah.
And they're only there, like, this is what this is, like, right before Labor Day. He gets taken in the middle of December.
Oh.
Like, him and Annabeth are, like, just kind of always at camp, and they're there, like, with a bunch of other kids before Christmas and stuff, and they just, like, go to bed and they wake up the next morning and he's just gone. And nobody sees him for 8 months. It's just, that's why it's so scary. Like, he's just gone. Like, what do you think, who could possibly do that to Percy of all people?
Yeah.
Just disappear him like that. It's such a great setup because you're automatically just scared because you're like, how could Percy possibly have that happen to him out of everybody? But yeah, I'm proud of us for finishing the books.
Yes.
The first 5 books. I don't know if I believe that we would do it when we first started, but I'm glad that we did.
Yeah, and
it was really fun.
Our next goal is the Heroes of Olympus series, mostly just to stick with Percy for a while, because
although, like, look forward to me having mental breakdowns reading The Lost Hero because there is no Percy in that entire book.
I mean, he's the titular lost hero, but
yeah. That book was so funny. The first time I read it, I also read that book in, like, a day or something because I was just like, where is Percy? Like, you can't tell, where is he? And so I just kept reading because I had to know where he was. I was so afraid for most of that book that he was dead.
Yeah.
And so I just kept reading until they finally told us where he was, which is the very end of the book.
Yeah.
So I just had to keep going.
Okay, and here's where I don't know how I found out that Estelle exists, because I always thought she was in the end of The Last Olympian. Like, I always thought we get a time flash and, like,
people have talked about how he has a younger sister. It's just kind of one of those things that people discuss. And so I'm sure you saw, like, videos or something of people talking about it. I honestly don't know when she shows up, but I have to imagine it might be in the Trials of Apollo books, or maybe at the end of Heroes of Olympus, they Sally says she's pregnant or something, and I just don't remember because I forgot that I didn't remember that she was a thing either until we started doing all this stuff and I started seeing more Percy Jackson content in general. I totally forgot about that.
The thing is, I feel like I've known that Estelle exists for, like, a decade. And maybe I saw it somewhere. Maybe I saw it on Tumblr or something, and that's where my brain is getting it. Like in the Tumblr ages when that was a big thing. That's probably where I got it from. Yeah.
And to talk about other stuff, the one thing I wanted to say about it seems like, at least for right now, them filming outside might be done. Who knows? They could be doing something tomorrow, and I just have no idea. But I did want to just mention it just because we showed videos and stuff when they were filming season 2, but I don't want to do that for this season. And the main reason why is just because when the like reckoning happened with Becky in May, when the leaks and stuff happened, one of the things she said that like stayed in my mind was that when fans go to watch filming, they sometimes stand really close to the camera, and because they're trying to like film the scene that they're filming like on their phones on like the camera that's like actually filming the scene, and that they get like really close to like the cast and stuff, where it's hard for like the security people to say something, because especially when they're filming, they get worried that they're going to film it and post it to try to make it look like they're jerks or something. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that it was like that. And I wouldn't, because I've never been on like a set or anything like that for something this big. I remember once when I was in high school, this like random like not home movie, but like small town movie, like a movie they showed on TV but only in Wisconsin, filmed some scenes at like my high school. And we went, and my friends and I went when they were filming, because it was really fun. But I always had this idea that when people film for big things like this, that there's like space between the fans and the cast, and that they leave them alone, and so that they can like get their work done and stuff. But when she said that, it just made me realize that like not everybody does that. And that just makes me feel really uncomfortable whenever I see those pictures and videos that people get now. And like some of them are just people who are at that college who literally just go to school there, and just like was like, Walker Scobell's running through my school, like what's happening right now, and they just like filmed it because it's literally just at their school. But there are Mandy and I are like little spies. We follow some Instagram accounts that are like update sort of accounts, just and like in on their like channels and stuff, just to see what they're posting. And on those channels, they'll post things about where they're filming, like a couple days before they actually do it, to like so that people will show up purposely just for that, which is it's just a different feeling of people going there just to try to like film the entire scene that they're filming. I don't want to see that anyway, but it just feels, it doesn't feel good. Like it's not like people having to like stumble across it, or like fans hearing about it the day of and like showing up to see what they're doing. It's more like organized than that, and it also makes me uncomfortable because they're like production studio, like their studio where they film all the time, it like the address of it is on the like things that they post. They're like they're not call sheets, but they're like things that they post in like the areas where they're going to film. And yeah, they post those things for people in like the area who live there to know like what they're doing, so they that's part of the whole thing. They have to like tell people beforehand who live in the area, like, you can't use this park during these hours because we'll be filming. Sorry if we're annoying. This is our schedule. But the people who are taking that stuff online and posting it, it just makes me feel weird to see like their address and their phone number and their email address being being posted in those places, because the people that are seeing that stuff don't care about like, privacy. Because those were like the kids that were spreading all of the leaks and things like that around everywhere. And so that stuff just makes me feel concerned about like the child actors, about all the kids, especially because Levi is like Walker's age during season 1. He's so young, and people are weirdly obsessed with Nico, of course. And so just, much less all the other kids too, but especially for him because he's the youngest one. It just makes me nervous to imagine people like fixating on what they're doing. And especially when people show up and film scenes and then post them online, and nobody knows like the context of anything that's going on, and nobody has like the patience to wait either. And so it feels like something like set up to just like make you disappointed or something. And it's like every time I see those scenes, I feel myself trying to figure it out, and then I'm like, stop. Like, stop. You don't know what's going on. We don't even know what episode this is. We can guess based on like what they're doing, but we don't even know. We don't know what's going on before or after this moment. Like, you can't figure it out. Like, even though my autism wants to figure it out, because that's just what my brain does, I can't figure it out because we just don't know yet.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't know why so many people want to see the scenes before they're done fully cooking. You know, like you don't
Yeah.
have any special effects. We don't have the context, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like it's cool to see the faraway videos where, you know, like somebody's just like, hey, look, they're here, you know? But when it
Mm-hmm.
gets into like, let me try to get all of the dialogue I can, let me try to get whatever parts of the scene I can. That's where it's like, this is a bit too much, guys. Come on.
Mm-hmm. And it is fun, like, seeing, you know, the actors interact with each other. It's just one of those things that reminds you that they're up there filming that every single day, as if you could forget. But it's just one of those things, but I don't want to actually see any of the scenes that they're filming, especially for this season. I don't want
Yeah.
anything for this season. Tell me nothing until you're
Mhm.
ready to actually show me things that are finished. I can wait.
Yeah,
I really can wait to see the stuff from this season. It's worth it to wait.
exactly. And the two things for me are going to be Zoe's costume and Thalia's costumes.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like I as a fashion girly, I want to see them on screen like the way they're intended. I don't want to see these like fan made videos necessarily. And I've seen enough to know like Zoe looks fairly book accurate, and I didn't get a good enough look at Thalia from them, which I'm glad for, especially knowing that
Well,
why did I
okay.
forget her name? Yeah,
One thing with
Tamara.
that is Thalia was something that people were complaining about, which I was just like, what's going on? Because they were like, she doesn't look punk, and I was like, number one, how can you tell?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can hardly even see them very well. And then also, even if you can think that you can tell what they're wearing, why do people think that she's going to show up like a punk rock princess when she's going on a quest?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I left
It's
that
not
comment on some
practical.
random person's video being like, hey guys, Annabeth is being tortured by Luke, but hold on, let me do my, like, eyeliner first before we leave. What? Like, what? She's not gonna do that right now when they're on a quest. She'll look like that when the quest is over and also before it begins. But right now, in these episodes when they're traveling and they're in danger all the time and they're trying to rescue Annabeth before she gets killed by somebody who she keeps defending during this season. That's not the time. Like, you have to travel. Like, when you're like traveling in the airport, do you wear like your best clothes? Like, no.
And if you do, you're a freak. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Like, what's wrong with you? But
Yeah.
Jelly, like, that was funny how people were doing that, and I was just like annoyed by everything. Every video I saw was people either complaining about Thalia's like clothes, and I was like, we don't even know what she like. They're not gonna give that away like that. That's gonna be a big reveal in this season, like at the end of this season and things like that. Beyond
Mm-hmm.
like what we see like in the past, but the big reveal likely of her in the here and now at the end of the season is gonna be such a huge thing. It's hard for
Mm-hmm.
me to believe that. I'm honestly not sure they're gonna show us any of Thalia before like the season itself actually starts. We'll see like whenever they give us the last big like trailer, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't give us really anything about her and just like allude to her but don't actually show it. Um
Exactly.
but it's just between that and like people just like making fun of how Levi and Walker run. I was like, can everyone shut up? Because this is just so annoying that people are already being like Titans Curse isn't going to be a good season. I'm like, I need everybody to get a grip.
Exactly.
Like, because you don't like how they're running around this college that they're going to make look like the Smithsonian. Um the scenes that I saw looked really fun. Like there was a definite like a couple definite changes that they made, but it's fun changes to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one main one was that Clarice was there.
Yeah.
Because if you remember like the scene in the books, they get dropped off from like the van from camp. And then, you know, all the craziness happens with Percy being there and Luke attacking them and like what's his name? I forget the villain guy who Dr. Thorne, that's his name.
Yes.
Um in that book and stuff, and that whole them attacking them with the undead skeletons and stuff like that, and then they like have to like run to get to the subway to like get on the train to like leave town. And so people are like, oh, why is Clarice there? And I'm like, she's one. The other thing that they changed is that Nico is there. And I like kind of love that idea of Nico, like either Nico getting Clarice to let him come or just jump or just like hiding. It looks, he gets out of the car when nobody else is around and Percy sees him and is like, Nico. And so I think he's like trying to hide and like trying to sneak there with them to try to probably talk to Bianca. But either way, it's like a fun idea just because it's mass chaos. Like that part of the quest is already mass chaos because Percy is there and all these crazy things are happening. And so Nico being there and Percy trying to like get Nico back to camp while he's not supposed to be there either. And then like all this kind of crazy stuff happening and like Clarice showing up to drive them to like the subway would be fine. But our friend Sophia also made the point that they do go to Arizona as part of like the quest, and Clarice's mom's house is in Arizona. When she goes to her mom's house when Chris Rodriguez shows up there during the course of this book, to figure out like the labyrinth and stuff. So she could just help them get to Arizona. Yeah. And then like go off on her own after that, and they go off on the quest because the most important scenes she still wouldn't be there for. And so it could literally just be that simple of instead of coming up with a whole thing of them going on the subway and them going on a train and them doing all this stuff, they could just have her drop them off and they could still talk to Apollo and continue on like normal. And they could still have like the scenes that are in those parts that are important, but she's just there too. It doesn't actually change anything. And I was really glad to see her just because she's basically the only scene I saw of her was her showing up in like the camp van. And I was guessing that she might show up when she finds out that Percy's gone or that Nico's gone or both. And be there to try to like get Nico at least to come back and maybe to try to get Percy to come back. But she shows up and they all like literally like jump into the van to help get away. And so considering that her whole storyline is in season 2 is about learning that like being friends with like the other demigods is better than trying to make her dad happy, it would make sense that she would show up and help them when they're on a quest like that when she can.
Exactly.
Because that does make sense. And it's just hilarious because that part of there's always like mass chaos on every quest, and especially at the start. And that's like the mass chaos of that quest is them at the Smithsonian. And so like, why not make it a little bit more chaotic by adding Nico into the mix and Percy running around chasing him?
Yep.
But he's definitely surprised. Like some people were like, did Percy leave to go on the quest because he was going after Nico? But like, no. There's a part where I can't even hear what Walker is saying, but you can just tell from like the way he moves his head that he's like, who's here? Nico's here? Why is Nico here? And so he's definitely looked surprised to see him. And the way that Nico runs from him shows that he knows he's not supposed to be there. And I'm like, yeah, that does make sense though for like little baby Nico. That why would he just like sit back and not try to talk to his sister again? Because they did talk, because Becky has said that they add more things with the two of them to make their bond more like established, I guess is the best way to put it. And that's a way to do it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and just to make it all worse when she dies.
Yeah.
Because regardless, that will make it much harder when she dies because he was literally like there when they were on the quest. And so whatever they say to get him to go back to camp is going to be rather interesting when they get to the end. It just makes it harder, which is the whole point of all that.
So we wanted to talk a bit about the concept of Dark Percy, and especially in light of reading The Last Olympian, or like reading the entire thing, honestly. And one thing that I had brought up in an earlier podcast was that Clarice's reaction to Selena's death is a lot of what people expect Dark Percy to be like. And It's this vengeful protectiveness. And I'm not saying Percy's not protective and that he doesn't get sassy and angry sometimes, but we're in his head when he's going through some of these fights. And in some of these fights, he's calculating, like, okay, that giant over there reminds me of Tyson, so I have to remind myself that's not Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's a hellhound I'm gonna fight. It's not like Miss O'Leary.
Mm-hmm.
We see some of these things. We see that his immediate response to a lot of situations is empathy. Ethan's kind of a good example because, like, yes, he does eventually get frustrated with Ethan of like, I've tried to save your ass multiple times, dude. Come on. But at first, he's just like, I'm not gonna fight to the death with another demigod. Are you guys freaking crazy?
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
doing that. But yeah, that especially after the last Olympian, it never makes any sense, but especially doesn't after this book.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you were right that people want him to be like Clarice.
Mm-hmm.
They want him to go off and like avenge people and do all these crazy things. Because honestly, because of toxic masculinity, I think is most of it is like they see like a boy character, because he's not a man, he's a child, that is like a powerful figure that has a lot of power. And so they're just used to characters like that doing those sort of things. But Percy isn't that kind of person. And this also isn't that kind of series where the hero of it would be doing that kind of stuff to like show how he cares about people. He does that by like helping people or like protecting. He does protect people, but you don't need to be like violent or angry, out of control angry like that in order to protect people. It's better if you're not, like with what happened with Clarice and Selena. Like Clarice was doing all these things for Selena after she was dead. She could have just helped her when she was alive and she wouldn't have had to go off and do those things. She had to do those things because she messed up and didn't help her when she was actually still here. It was more about like her being angry at herself and taking it out on other things. It wasn't actually like helpful. And like, yeah, when you think about one of the like what if scenarios people talk about for Heroes of Olympus is if it was reversed, like if Annabeth was the one that was taken and Percy was the one left. And like I remember once, like over a year ago, somebody on a video, this comment that I left still gets likes every once in a while, of somebody asking like, what do you think would happen if that happened? And I was like, murder would happen. And I still think that that is likely true, that he would do things like that, but it wouldn't be because he wants to or likes to. It would be because he would be like forced to in order to get the gods' attention, that they did something that like almost like dangerous, that they took somebody that important to him, knowing how he would respond to something like that. It's not because he actually wants to do that kind of stuff. He doesn't even like fighting that much. Like we say that a lot, but he doesn't. Like he has to fight in these situations, so he figures out the best way to get like his basically reach his goal without people getting that hurt. He just figures out the fastest way to do that. But he's not one that even likes to like revel in like the violence of like hurting other people or things like that. I just think it's fascinating that people have this idea that Percy is like this anger-filled person. He's not even an angry teenager.
Exactly.
He's not. Like, yeah, like, yes, there are times when he's angry, sure. But he's angry for justifiable reasons. And his anger doesn't like control his actions, I guess, is like the main thing. Like in The Last Olympian, we see when he's on the bridge and he sees the Minotaur has a necklace of demigod kids that he's killed. That makes him so angry. But his response after that is like, well, I don't want to hurt these hellhounds because they look like my pet. But I'm like literally convincing myself that I can do this. That I can hurt these people, these dogs, because they're not my dog. And even when he's like angry like that, he's hurting hellhounds because he has to, and he's purposefully not hurting demigods to the point that they would die because he doesn't want to actually hurt any of them. And so even in that moment when he's angry at the Minotaur, he's still in control of himself. He never if you're looking for a character like a male character that gets like so enraged at things that they like lose control and then come back, I can't think of somebody in a show or a movie or book or something right now, because those characters scare me, like, just to be honest.
Yeah.
So I
So
don't like,
okay.
but
Do you ever get the TikTok ads of like the short stories, like
mhm,
where it's cheesy short stories? It reminds me of the ones about wolves, where
yeah.
it's always some guy who's like, "Oh, she's my Luna, and I'm gonna protect her with everything."
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say was, I understand people wanting that sort of thing. Like, if you're
Mhm.
somebody that struggled with anger stuff, wanting to see a character like that that struggles with it but is able to handle it, that is like the hero of the thing that you like. But that's not Percy. Percy isn't somebody that like struggles with his anger. He doesn't need to
Mhm.
learn how to control his anger. He's been
Yeah.
abused since he was a child. Like,
Exactly.
I like cannot like I feel like a broken record saying this kind of stuff all the time, but genuinely, when you grow up in a household with somebody that will beat you if you do the wrong thing, you learn how to regulate your own anger from the age of like 6, like he did
Mhm.
when Gabe was around. You learn how to do that. That's the thing that makes you like an adult when you're still a child, because you
Yeah.
learn how to control your emotions by just like learning how to shut them off, because you have to for survival purposes. And so
Yeah.
Percy had to do that. He also had to do that at school with teachers and stuff. He couldn't just like go off on teachers. That's why the times when he does, like one of the very first things that ever happens in The Lightning Thief,
I was gonna
when he
say, like, the
when
only
he
time
yeah,
that I've read it is in this book.
and when he pushes Nancy, he's
Mhm.
not doing it on behalf of himself. He's doing it to protect Grover. That's
Exactly.
like that's always the reason why he does it, is to like help somebody else. He doesn't do it on behalf of himself because he's angry about something that happened to him. But even when he does it to help other people, it's still way more controlled than almost most characters in this series, honestly, at one point or another. He is not the person that's going to like lose it in that way. He's always going to have some control over his emotions because of his childhood and
Mhm.
what happened to him in his childhood. And so it's like it's weird to watch people want to make him into this like edgy, angry, vengeful person when that's just like not him. Like, yes, he gets mad, but it doesn't ever get close to consuming him. That's
Mhm.
not He's too hard on himself. He is way too hard on himself to ever get to like a point like this is obviously my interpretation, because I also do not have this problem. I
Mhm.
shame myself so much for getting mad that it's like a miracle that I even let people see me get mad most of the time. But my interpretation of this as people who do, is that you have to be able to get angry like that, you have to feel sure, I would imagine, that how you feel is like justified, and that you
Mhm.
have a right to be this angry and you want to like unload it on other people. But that seems more like what he's like. Like, I don't think he could have like that justification of knowing like I'm right for being angry like this, because he's so hard on himself and doesn't see himself like that, like consistently
Yeah.
throughout the story, that I don't think he would ever be the kind of person that would be like, I have the right to do this to another person. Like, that's why the only time he gets close to acting like that is when they're in Tartarus. And it's because he's literally like having a mental breakdown, like legitimately. They're
Yeah.
going through so many horrible things. And the thing that he hurts is the god of misery, and he just makes her feel some misery back for a couple seconds because he's tired of everybody hurting everybody he loves and cares about and nobody getting anything back. That's very understandable as an abused kid, that you just want somebody else to feel bad for a couple seconds after you felt so bad for so long. That's like when I have those moments where I'm like, why didn't my dad go to prison? It's so wrong that he didn't, and I have to still like live like this and all that kind of stuff. That's like his moment like that. It lasts for 5 seconds, and he's suicidal for the next book because he feels so bad about doing that for 5 seconds. Like, that's
Yeah.
as close as he gets. And that's still not anything. Like, he's doing it to a god that is trying to kill him in the most evil place on the planet. who's literally trying to make him feel so miserable that he just dies.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like
Yeah.
he's not that kind of kid. It's
Well,
just he's just not that.
I don't want to be like one of those people because, like, please identify however you want to identify, but raising a boy who very much identifies as boy, there is an innate protectiveness that I do think comes with masculinity.
Mhm.
And that is the healthy way of putting it, right? Like, and
Mhm.
protectiveness can turn into violence, it can turn into vengeance, and but I guess what we're trying to say is that what he goes through is very, very normal. You know, it's not this like extra dark secret side of him. It's normal. It's very
Mhm.
normal.
Yeah.
And you know, he is a person with a very high justice sensitivity.
Mhm.
And that is usually the thing that sets it off. It's not, you know, this, because I feel like when people try to mix it with like almost a dark romantasy element, especially when it comes to scenes with him and Annabeth, um, that they're forgetting that he also at times, you know, like during battles when he could rage out, he lets other people, you know, like take his place. Like
Mhm.
the biggest one of course being Titan's Curse, where he literally takes on the burden of the world because he's like, this isn't my fight, you know. He very easily could have driven into that
Mhm.
like wrathful side and been like, oh my gosh, you know, like Zoe's hurt. They still have Annabeth. It's interesting because yeah, it's not anything abnormal is all we're trying to say. Is every
Mhm.
time he gets angry, there's an explanation. And I wouldn't even call it losing control. I don't think he ever fully loses control. Where in his
Mhm.
head, we see how he's calculating his moves while that stuff is happening.
Even like you obviously haven't read the part from House of Hades. But even that part, like he hasn't he doesn't like lose control. He just goes further than he usually would. Like he's
Mhm.
thinking like I want the god of misery to feel like what misery feels like. And so he uses his water powers in a way that he didn't realize he could do until that moment because it's something that he would never usually want to do. But even with that, it's like he just wants it to feel some of the pain that they're going through for
Mhm.
a couple seconds. And Annabeth gets scared because he doesn't do stuff like that ever. And then he stops. And that's it. It's over. It's like a 10-second part that people are like obsessed with. But that's all he does, and that's it. It's over. And
Mhm.
then he hates himself after that. Even more than normal. But it's just that's as far as he gets. But even with that, he hasn't like lost control really. He's just like doing things that he usually would think about when you get like mad in your head and think about things like that, but things that he usually wouldn't do like actually in person. But he does it that one time and then never again.
Yeah.
Because he's just not that kind of he's not a vindictive like angry person in that way. He's just not. It's weird that people try to turn him into that. Um,
Yeah.
when he's like one of the only characters in media that isn't like that. Like, our friend Jean saw the new Superman movie and compared him and was like, he's like Percy. I want you guys to watch this movie. And
Yeah.
we still haven't watched it, but I sent her uh an edit somebody did of a speech that Superman gives in that movie where he's talking about like the best thing about me is that I'm human. And somebody matched it up with scenes of Percy. And Jean said that she started crying after she watched it, but I was like, oh yeah, he is like Percy. Because the whole like speech he's giving is that like the thing about me is that I'm human and that sometimes I mess up but the feelings that I feel about other people are the best things about me, not like the powers that I have.
Yeah.
And things like that. And that's the kind of character that Percy is.
I'm as human as anyone. I love, I get scared. I wake up every morning and despite not knowing what to do, I put one foot in front of the other and I try to make the best choices I can. I screw up all the time. But that is being human. And that's my greatest strength.
Like, our friend Jean said this when I sent that to her, but she said, like, if you don't like a character like Percy, it's a red flag. And like he makes best friends with Bessie in season 3 because he just wants to help animals and likes them and cares about them, to the point that he screams at Zeus at the end of that book, like yells at Zeus to stop them from killing Bessie. Nothing would change. Like, especially when you look at like how things end, nothing would change in the entire history of like his character, the storyline. Bessie doesn't come up again. She's just there as like a little supportive little animal in the end that he talks to a couple times. But it's not like anyone uses her again, or he even thinks about using her again. Like, she never comes up. And so if they would have killed Bessie, it wouldn't have been anything like plot-wise that would have changed. It's purely like his character. That he's not okay. He's not okay with them killing an innocent thing like Bessie that hasn't done anything wrong. It's not her fault that people can use her to hurt the gods. And that is what he is up in arms about. And that's like him in like every book. He's just a empathetic, like caring, sensitive little kid. He definitely gets that from Sally. Because Lord knows he's not getting that from Poseidon. but like, it makes sense with somebody like Sally. Sally's like that too. She sees Tyson and wants to help him. And knows that he's like something else, but like doesn't care. She doesn't ever judge him for looking different or seeming different when she can actually see that he is different, even though Percy can't in the beginning part of that book. Like, that's just Percy. Like, he's very protective of the people he cares about. He cares about anyone that is like nice, basically, to him, or gives people a chance. He's willing to give people a chance that have messed up. Like, he trusts Luke at the end to stab himself to death. That's somebody that has a lot of empathy, that's willing to trust him after everything that he did. That he could even imagine that to happen again. Nobody else would give Luke that like chance. It reminds me of what I was saying before about me like forgiving my mom. Like, that's the kind of similar thing that he did with like letting Luke be the one to take himself out and trusting that he would actually do it. Like, it's a big like risk when you do that, and it is definitely worth it to me. And it definitely worked out for Percy too. But he's a very like sweet kid. He's a very sweet, like sensitive kid. Like, the way that he besides like him noticing things that people do because of like abuse stuff, like, you notice people's little behaviors and stuff as like a coping skill. Besides that, like, every person he ever runs into, including monsters, the way he interprets just the world is by trying to understand where the other person is coming from. That's always his first instinct, is to try to figure out where the other person is coming from and what their motivations are for why they're doing the things that they're doing. And like, I am like Percy, and I do that too. I always try to figure out, like, why do you think that? The people that bother me the most are the ones that I can't figure out why they made those decisions that they did. And I will sit there and think about them for hours to try to figure out why. But that it bothers me. But that's like what Percy does too, and that's just like when you have, he likes people. Like, he believes in like people. He thinks that the world can get better, which is why he wants to continue living, because he thinks his life will improve. Like, there's almost nothing about his life at this point that would make you think that he would believe that, but he believes that anyway. Like, I believed that. I don't know why I believed that. Like, genuinely, I don't know why I believed that growing up, but I did somehow. That's why I'm still alive, is because me, during all those years, somehow convinced myself that life would get better at a certain point. Even though I had nothing to go on for why it would, or when it would, or how it would. I just like kept thinking that, and I still keep thinking that. That's why I keep trying. But that's like you have to have a lot of like love for humanity as a whole in order to see people that way, instead of seeing it the way that other people do sometimes, of like humanity is like flawed. Like, like what I was saying about him and Luke being opposite. Like, Luke sees it as like humanity is flawed and less than I'm the one that needs to show them the way because everyone else is too stupid to figure it out. Percy would never say something like that. And I'm generally trying to think of a character like that, like a one that has more like rage, that is able to like get a hold of it. The best character I can think, just to give people one like that, the best character I can think of is Bakugo from My Hero Academia. It's an anime.
Mhm.
I hate Bakugo on principle because he spends 2 seasons screaming. Like literally screaming. And he still screams even when he's not being mean, but that's just how he talks. But for like 2 seasons or so, he just is actually screaming and being like the worst to like the main character in that anime, and is a full on like bully. Like the very first episode, he tells the main character to kill himself.
Mhm.
Like he tells him if you just would jump off of a roof and save yourself time, you could start over life again and be a better person.
Yeah.
Like, and so he goes through a really good character development, really good character development story in that anime where he apologizes for that and a lot to the main character who has a lot of anxiety issues because of how he terrorized him growing up, and
Mhm.
like goes out of his way to say sorry for doing that, tries to make it up for him, does a lot of stuff in fights to try to protect him for trying to make up for how he treated him. He completely changes everything around. And even though he's still always like yelling, because that's just how he talks, it's not the same at all anymore. He turns into a completely different person. I don't like him because he just reminds me of bad things, but as a character he does an actual like redemption story. He actually goes through like a redemption story, and he's one of the rare ones that actually does.
You guys do watch this on YouTube, like feel free to leave in the comments if you guys have any characters that come to mind for you, of like what is one for somebody who's looking for that relatability. But yeah, as a mom of a boy that's in about this age group, like this kind of makes me want to segue into I mean, this is something I brought up around the election, especially because,
Mm-hmm.
there was a ton of white women coming online being like, it wasn't me. My hands are clean, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey, your hands are clean, then talk to your sons. Talk to your sons. And, I have had discussions with William of like, some people feel that the problems in their lives are, like because of certain groups of people. Sometimes people get so angry about that they don't see the humanity in these other people, and I just don't want you to lose that. I don't want you to like ever be convinced that seeing that is a bad thing. Like seeing that other people are people, they deserve to be treated well, is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to keep it simple and high level like that because he was 11 at the time, he's 12 now. And like I don't need to get into too much of like gender politics, sexuality politics, um, xenophobia. I mean, he's slightly aware of, but it's more just like we don't treat people different because of how they look or who they are or how they identify. And, like we stand up for people who need help. And those are kind of like, it's something that I heard from somewhere, and I'm sure it's some cheesy like mom site, but like that moms kind of are generally where our moral compass comes from, like
Mm-hmm.
the first place it originates. And so I do try to have these like philosophical discussions with him every once in a while on like, how to be a good person. And I think these discussions are always important to have with boys. Like you don't have to be this scary masculine thing to be performing masculinity well. You
Mm-mm.
don't have to exclude others to make that happen. You don't have to be violent or tough. You
Mm-hmm.
can like animals. You can like cute things. You can have your fruity drinks. It's 2025. Like it's time we stop giving boys these messages that they can only be one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only going to damage them in the future.
Yeah, like I can't picture William ever being like that. Like not how he, like that just feels so weird. He's such a sweet child.
Yeah.
Is that I
Like
can't picture him ever doing like the reverse. But I did want to bring up Daniel, who plays Tyson. One really great answer to a question that he got asked during Comic-Con times was they asked like something that they learned from their characters. And he said that one of the things he learned from Tyson was always holding on to that like empathy and like sweetness and like caring for other people, because he was talking about like when you grow up and become a man, you learn that you're supposed to, be like stronger, be like the strong like kind of person that people can depend on. He's like, but you also need to remember this stuff of still caring about people, never losing like that empathy for other people and wanting to help them and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's actually a really, really good answer.
Mm-hmm.
For him to say for a show for a bunch of like younger people. I'm
Yeah.
really glad that he said that, and I hope he says that more when the show actually is airing. I'm sure he will in other interviews and stuff, because that is very important to remember about Tyson. Like everybody loves Tyson, and everyone loves Tyson.
Yeah.
Sophia, our friend, was at like the panel, and people screamed the loudest when they showed Tyson at the very end. That was the part of the panel, that was the part of the trailer live that got the most reaction, because everybody loves him so much. And we love him because he's a sweetheart, because he's so sweet and loves everybody and just wants to help everyone and wants to help protect people the way that he does. And he's also showing masculinity. Like masculinity doesn't have to be like destructive or whatever. You don't need to show how much. I guess like the general discussion about like the whole Dark Percy thing is, I think people have this idea that the way to show that you care about people, if you present as like a man in some way, is by being like violent or like aggressive. And that is the only way to show that you care about people. But that's usually not what makes people feel actual like care for people. Like if Percy started, I don't even know if Percy like was in, when he was in the underworld with Hades at the beginning of the book, when Nico backstabs him, if he like went after Hades when he disappears and tries to like stab him a bunch of times, would that be him protecting Nico? Like, no, that would just made everything a million times worse, and Hades wouldn't have come to show up to help at the end. Instead, he leaves it up to Nico to help get his dad here and help prove that he's a trustworthy person after he felt betrayed by him. That's like, that is still being like showing masculinity in a positive way. He's giving people time to like show that they can make up for mistakes that they make, and he's not like damning them to hell forever, literal hell forever, because they did something wrong once. Like, he doesn't do that with
Yeah.
people most of the time. He wants people to stop. Like, he was begging Luke to stop during these books. He just wanted him to stop, and he never would. And so he had no other choice but to hope that he would die, so that
Yeah.
he would then actually stop, because nothing else was working. But he's not that. You don't need to be like angry or violent or destructive or have big muscles or any of that kind of stuff to show that you're like a man. It's much more like a man to just figure out what the people in your life need and help them with it. Sometimes you have to go and like think about stuff for a while. I'm thinking about Jake and his sad animes.
Yeah.
But
So
still.
that's like another thing that's interesting, because so Shannon and I obviously grew up with a lack of healthy masculinity in our area, like, or in our family. And I've gotten to a place where I found a man who I believe has healthy masculinity, very much a provider, and not necessarily a provider in like, let me bring home the bacon, but more just he has never ever let me feel like I don't have someone taking care of me. He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do when he's gone. Like, that's where we're at. But
Oh yeah, that was one random thing that I can just mention this now. Sorry, that just like made me think of that one of the things that people critique sometimes about Annabeth and Percy is there's a line that Annabeth says somewhere in Heroes of Olympus where she says that like she can't imagine her life without Percy in it. And some people hear that, especially, I think it's mainly younger people, but still, they hear that line and they think that that means that their relationship must be like unhealthy or something. And I'm like, no, that just means that sometimes people come into your life and they change your life so much that you can't remember, you can remember, but you also can't remember what it was like before them, because your life has improved so much with them in it that you like have to like actually sit there and think about how you used to feel before they were around, and you don't want to ever go back to feeling that way anymore. That's like what that means, to like use like you talking about Jake as an example of that.
Yeah.
And like my sister's boyfriend, they've been together for like 11 years. They both just, neither one of them have good like family things going on with marriage, but they basically are married. And they have been like, they've been the people that we know are going to stay together for a while. But her boyfriend is also like that, where he's like this kind of bigger guy who likes like death metal music. And so I love, because he breaks every stereotype. His favorite movies are animated movies. When I lived with them, they would watch every animated movie. Like they went and saw all of the Troll movies in theaters. And my niece is only 2. All of them came out before she was ever even thought of being born. He loves all the animated movies. Like when we used to go over for Christmas before my niece was around, I would ask them like what animated movie they want to watch, and we would just watch. Like I watched Big Hero 6 because it was his favorite movie at the time, and
That's
we watched it and cried. And like, so he's like, you would, when you look at him, you wouldn't think he's that kind of guy or whatever, but he is. He loves animated movies. They make him cry sometimes. He's just that kind of guy. He's still like a very like sensitive sort of guy like that. And yeah, he has a good job and wants to provide for my niece and my sister and stuff, and wants to be able to do nice things. He's working really hard to try to get a new job so that they can buy a house, because he wants them to be able to live in their own house and not have to rent anymore and things like that. But he's not like toxic like that at all. He's like, yeah, I know that he is always gonna defend like my niece or my sister or whatever with words, but he's not the type to like actually try to do anything like active like that. That's not his kind of style, and he doesn't have to. And that's like the point, is like that's totally different from the people that I knew growing up like that, who said that they were men, but were not. I was more of the man of the house than anybody else.
Yeah, I imagine you had to be.
Or my mom was. My mom was more like, I guess, because she was, in charge. Like my mom had, at one point in my life, my mom had 4 jobs. Like she worked as an ED teacher, which is already a very difficult, like emotionally taxing sort of job for kids. And then there's a certain time where she had a part-time job at our local grocery store on the weekends. She would deliver newspapers in the middle of the night from like,
oh my gosh, back when they used to drop them off at 4 a.m.
Yeah, at like from like 1:30 to like 3 o'clock in the morning or something. She would have to get up to deliver them. And she used to do like when they would do ACT testing and stuff at schools, she would, on those like random Saturdays, she would work that extra job too, to like be the one like proctoring like the test or whatever for all of the kids. And so there was a time, many years of when I was like a teenager especially, that she had like 3 or 4 jobs at a time. And my dad had 2, and used to like complain like he was dying because his second job was just being a janitor at a closed bank. And I'm like, are you kidding? He's had an office job. You sit in a cubicle and make everyone else's life worse by terrorizing them at your job. And then you go and like watch TV and get paid for it and clean out like the bank's like garbage cans. And he acted like that was the worst thing that ever happened to him, when my mom is working 4 different jobs.
Yeah.
And like had a hard time sometimes getting us stuff we needed, purely because she couldn't be home. And so he was the one that was providing literally everything for us. He didn't want to give my mom even like child support. He thought that she was lying all the time about how much things cost. And so he definitely didn't help with any of that kind of stuff. It was her figuring it all out. And yeah, that's honestly more like masculine than anything he was ever doing. Like if you want to throw yourself a pity party, I don't know what kind of masculinity that is besides pathetic.
Pretty much.
That's why, like, I laugh about Luke throwing himself pity parties, because I recognize that. I do.
Yeah. Okay. So, that was the topics we had for today. Obviously, since we finished the last Olympian, we're hesitant to dive into the next series like immediately, especially because stuff is going to get a little bit more progressively like Sea of Monsters, with that premiering in December. And so we're kind of just like letting ourselves be a little bit looser with the schedule right now. We are reading Cold Spring, which is the Rick Riordan's first book. And Shannon's further than I am. I need to catch up, but we are going to do that all in one episode. And just like from what I've read so far, I will say I'm really invested in the story. But it's a rough one. It's rough, like topic wise. Be back next. Well, I guess we don't have to say Monday now because we're recording here. But yeah, whenever we upload now.
We'll be back next week.